Hi, I'm Jennifer Sir, owner of the Sewing Room, and today we're going to talk about textile sustainability as it applies to our own personal fabric stash. So I know there are a lot of home sewers out there who have a whole separate hobby of collecting fabric, but because these textiles could end up in the landfill when you are old and gray and not sewing anymore. Let's start talking about how we can remedy that situation. So, I'm going to screen share with you my presentation that I gave to a group, a needlework group in a retirement community recently. I was asked I really wanted to talk about textile sustainability, and they asked me to specifically talk about using up your stash because I think it becomes, as people get older, their stash becomes a bigger situation. So, without further ado, let me share my screen. Here we go. Share. We're going to slideshow. Here we are. Let's go back to the beginning. Okay, why does textile sustainability matter? It matters because we are producing more waste than our planet can handle. And a lot of the fibers that go into textile manufacturing end up in the landfill, either because of um, people throwing away clothes, this throwaway culture, but also sometimes if a person dies and they have a fabric collection, their family may just throw everything out. I'm not saying that's what I want my family to do because there are ways to manage those textiles, but there's all sorts of reasons why we have textile waste. And here we go. So, like I just said, the encouragement of overconsumption, it's huge. This is mainly in the fashion garment manufacturing process because of a disposable culture, but it is also in the home crafting world. So, textile waste comes in many forms. It could be from overflowing closets to an endless fabric and crafting stash. I mean, how many of you out there have more fabric than you can ever sew with? I think I have a manageable amount, but I've been working on that for years. And I also have a store where I can take it to and resell it in my Etsy shop. So, why is sewing so important? Well, unlike fast fashion, home sewing lets us repair, refashion, and reuse. So, all of you quilters out there, we're going to actually talk about using your skills in a different way, um, and turning it towards something that you can wear as well as something that you can put on your bed. Okay, so using your fabric stash. For those of you who have a fabric stash, which a lot of us do, I'm an apparel sewer, but I am also a quilter and a doll maker and a needle pointer and a knitter, and I have a lot of textiles. So one of the things that I try to do is not have that many projects going on at once, or maybe one from each of these genres. Like I have an embroidery project, I have a knitting project, and I try not to have too many projects in the queue because I might get bored. Well, I am definitely going to get bored, but I might not like that project I thought I would like. So, a lot of what we need to do is start thinking more about what we're doing. But when you want to start something, shop your stash before you go shopping for something new. If you have fabric, match the fabric weights and yards to appropriate projects. If you have a yarn habit, I recommend finding out the weights of the yarn and finding patterns for those weights before you actually buy the beautiful yarn. Or figuring out what yarn you have in your stash and then really searching for a pattern that's going to match those weights before you get started. And as it pertains to home sewing, which is what we're really going to focus on here, let's look at some small yardage ideas. Stash busting projects that I love. Well, quilts are definitely can be stash busting unless you buy an entire collection from the fabric store, which some of you may have. In which case, let's get cracking on that quilt, or at least take it to your local reuse store where they can resell it to someone who needs it if you're not going to use it again. But quilts typically have been something that people have made using fabric scraps, either from their clothing or from fabric in their own stash. Zipper bags. Who doesn't need 1,000 zipper bags? I do. I put all my projects in little zipper bags. I put my makeup in zipper bags. And you might even be able to make some reusable zipper bags that you can use for your lunch or your kids' lunch or even your husband's lunch or your wife's lunch. But anyways, so those are just a few things. You can make tote bags. We all need tote bags when we go to the grocery store. So I have a collection of hand sewn tote bags, which are much better because I can just throw them in the wash when they're done. I'm not using those reusable bags that you can get from the grocery store that are made out of that fabric that's like an interfacing fabric. Those are washable but not very durable, and they sometimes tear. But if you make your own tote bags, you can make them super durable and they'll last a long time. Fabric bowls and caddies. It's a great way to be creative and to reuse your stash. And people love those as gifts. Dolls and stuffies also take tiny bits of fabric. And if you wanted to make a doll, you can easily tea dye the fabric or coffee dye the fabric to be a skin tone that you like. And if you have some white fabric, and it takes tiny little bits of fabric. So it's definitely something you can do with small pieces of your stash. Additionally, there's a project that I love, which is the So Powerful project. And that project it's just fantastic. It's making these purses that take maybe 3 fat quarters to complete, and they get filled with sanitary supplies that get given to these girls in Zambia, and it helps them stay in school. So you can check them out at sopowerful.org. It's a great stash busting project for sure. Let's see. I think I need to move myself back. Here we go. Why? There we go. So yeah, that's a charitable stash busting project. And I think charity projects are super important. So lots of quilt guilds have groups where they donate quilts there's an organization called Quilts of Valor that are quilts for veterans. And then lots of guilds also donate to foster kids in need. So having your own quilt that you can take from home to home if you're a foster kid is really important to them and such a gift. Like I was talking about before, the So Powerful program is a program where people make bags that will hold hygiene items for girls in Zambia. More information on that at sopowerful.org. Other things you can do with quilts. So if you have a quilt collection or a quilt top collection, but you don't think you're going to get to actually quilting that piece, or using that quilt, you can turn those quilts into other things, jackets, bags, banners, and they make great, these banners would make a great decoration for the holidays. Okay, let's talk about upcycling. So now we're moving on from stuff that takes your fabric to maybe upcycling stuff that you already have in your wardrobe. So upcycling means to reuse discarded objects or material in such a way as to create a product of higher quality or value than the original. The opportunity to upcycle trash or turn it into new products was vast. So yes, so upcycling, it's one of my favorite things. I started upcycling with wedding gowns. So while I had a bridal business, one of my clients brought in her mother's wedding gown. She wanted to wear it, but it didn't fit. So, and it was also, the style was a bit dated. It was from the 60s, and she was getting married in, I think around the year 2000, late 90s, early 2000s. And so we completely restyled that dress and she was taller than her mom, so we had to redo the bodice so that it added about 4 inches to the length of the garment so that she could have a full length dress. And it turned out beautiful. I don't have a picture of it here, but these are some of the other dresses that I was inspired to make from thrift store dresses after I did that one. Here are a few more recent projects. I love working with men's shirts. So the two pictures on the left are dresses that I made using men's shirts. So you might have shirts in your closet that you can turn into garments, and I made a dress. The dress on the far left is one of my favorites because it just has an elastic waist, and I can just pull it right on. um, the dress on the far right was made from a vintage gown that somebody gave me that didn't fit. I cut it up and used a pattern with the remaining fabric, piecing where I needed to, and made that 1930s style dress. Um, why might we upcycle clothing? Well, maybe we want to create something new. We need to give ourselves a little project, a creativity project. Maybe we need to mend something broken. Our jeans have a hole in them. We might have a stain on our shirt, so we might want to cover up a stain. We also might want to create a piece of art or extend the life of a textile. Here are some examples of repurposing old jeans and denim. So, denim is one of those things that almost all of us have in our wardrobe. And after a while, our jeans might get a little saggy baggy, or they might even get a little small, or they lose their color in the wash and we don't love them anymore. So, before we throw them out or donate them, consider turning them into something else. So, um, there is a textile artist named Radha Weaver, and she has a site called Sewing Through Fog. And she used to work at Levi's and has a real connection to denim. So that is the examples on the far right are her work, and I highly recommend going to see what Radha is doing because she's really an amazing artist, and she has the same sort of passion I do for creative reuse and upcycling. But I thought these were great examples of ways to use your denim, like creating a cityscape on the back of a denim jacket, or using your jeans to turn something or using your quilting skills to turn your jeans into something, some new and fantastic textile. Uh, Upcycling while using your stash. So maybe you have a garment that got some bleach stains on it, like this flannel over here, and it looks like this person took some floral fabric, cut out these floral bits, and also added some lace to the cuffs and to the neckline, and then they created this very cool, artsy looking, shabby chic um, garment out of something that existed already. And I think it's just a wonderful example of what you can do. If you're a little more chic and austere, maybe you have made some random quilt blocks that you have hanging around, you can just add that to a t-shirt, no problem. And then far left over here, we have a band t-shirt, and then this person has added fabric to the bottom to give it a little handkerchief hem. It gives a cute little boho look, but also, yeah, changing the whole look of the band t-shirt into something a little more feminine. One of the things I love, love, love is using vintage textiles in making clothing. So I love that these embroideries are incorporated into something that someone can wear and show off because honestly, someone embroidered what was probably a tablecloth or a dish towel years and years ago, and that was just something they did for their own creative purpose. And then this person has taken that to the next level and used these in making these garments. So it's one of my favorite things to do because it highlights this embroidery so beautifully in such a unexpected way. And here is something that you can do. There's an organization. Uh, Palisa Nicolini, I believe is her name, has the More with Less studio, and she makes household goods from production scrap waste. So she has a relationship with some manufacturers who give her their scraps. And she makes these beautiful aprons and pot holders and all sorts of household things out of the manufacturing waste. So I think that's a terrific way to reuse your textiles. So if, and also if you look, so behind over here, behind her dress form is this wall of corks, and she uses that as insulation in a room that gets really hot or really cold in the summer or winter. So I thought that was also a great reuse of of something that oftentimes gets thrown away. So mending something broken. I love the use of sashiko in mending, where so we have this visible mending over here with a little bit of applique and embroidery, and it's just adding a whole new creative aspect to this thing that might have just gotten thrown out. And, you know, it's definitely a certain aesthetic. So you can do a little research. If this seems like too busy for you and you want to do something a little more modern, there are definitely ways you can do that. I thought this was a fantastic and creative way of mending a shredded sofa that the cat had gotten to. So they have added these threads and they're weaving this beautiful textile into this piece of furniture. And then sock darning is something that used to happen on the regular, but people are taking it to an entirely different level now, which is great if you knit socks and you wear them and you wear through them, or if you just want to learn how to mend the socks that you already have. And then covering up stains. So we talked a little bit about that in the list. And one thing you can do is you can embroider over it. So embroidery is a fantastic way to cover your stains. You can also use other textiles and create designs and use them like this. These little tiny pieces right here can be used to cover up a stain you have on a t-shirt and create a whole new visual interest. And then also you can dye your clothes to cover up the stain or create a whole new look with your garments that you have already. Then here are some examples of creating a wearable piece of art. Um, I love what they've done with with this sweatshirt. This one, they've combined a sweatshirt and a sweater together. So they're similar weights, but totally different textures, and it has a very artistic look to it. Over here, they've added appliques to a blazer, and I think that's also another fabulous way of making something brand new and beautifully artistic. Um, so embellish some existing garments or combine garments. The sky is the limit, let me tell you. Okay, so that's the end of my talk, but I want to tell you a little bit more about the sewing room, which is where I do most of my work. And we've been around since 2012. We teach mending, hemming, and upcycle classes. So if you want to learn how to do some of these things, come on down to Alameda. We've got a lot of classes that handle just that, because sustainability is one of the things we're very, very passionate. All of us who work there are very passionate about sustainability and upcycling. We also teach hand sewing and machine basics classes, as well as embroidery, sashiko, and a whole lot of other things. We serve kids, teens, and adults, and we have classes currently 7 days a week. So check us out at thesewingroomalameda.com. Yeah, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I would be delighted to hear from you and delighted to hear what you would like to learn. Thank you so much. So here we go. Here's my website again, thesewingroomalameda.com. You can email me at jennifer@thesewingroomalameda.com. Follow us on Instagram or YouTube, which is right where where we are today, or even over on TikTok, I'm the Sewing Room Alameda there as well. So without further ado, thanks so much for watching today. Give me a thumbs up and hit subscribe if you like this video. It really, really helps us out.